Up to this point, we've examined long-age radioisotopes. But what about short-lived radioisotopes? What about dates obtained from the decay of carbon-14, frequently referred to as carbon dating? It is common knowledge that radiocarbon dating is used to date bones and artifacts. However, most people are unaware that carbon dating is rarely used to date rocks thought to be very old. But what does it mean when we find carbon-14 in what is believed to be an ancient coal bed, or even a diamond? Here's geophysicist Dr. John Baumgartner.
Well, in today's world, carbon-14 is produced all the time in the atmosphere as a result of cosmic rays that come blasting in from outer space. And most of these cosmic rays consist of a proton, a very high energy proton, traveling at near the speed of light, and comes it blasting into the atmosphere, collides with an atom of oxygen or nitrogen in the atmosphere. There's almost like an explosion when this high energy particle encounters one of these atoms. It produces all kinds of other particles, including neutrons. And these neutrons, in turn, can interact with nitrogen atoms in the atmosphere and produce carbon-14. So we have carbon-14 being produced all the time in the atmosphere by this process. And it's only about one atom in a trillion carbon atoms in the atmosphere that is a carbon-14. So the amount of carbon-14 is very tiny, only about one atom in a trillion.
Plants take in carbon dioxide and through photosynthesis produce new plant tissues. While a plant is living, its tissues have the same ratio of C14 as the atmosphere. Animals, in turn, eat plants, and they also have C14 throughout their tissues with this same ratio. However, when plants and animals die, there's no longer this active connection with the atmosphere. In the remains of the dead plant or animal, the ratio of C14 to other forms of carbon steadily decreases over time due to radioactive decay. The longer the plant or animal has been dead, the smaller the ratio. This is the basis for C14 dating.
Carbon-14 in coal, it simply is the carbon-14 that was in the trees and other kinds of plants that were buried in the flood. So the way that this carbon-14 got into the coal was simply, it was in the living organisms before the catastrophe. The catastrophe ripped up the trees and plant life and buried them in thick layers that got compressed and formed into coal. So it's relatively simple to understand how the carbon-14 got into the coal. The big issue is why hasn't it, if the Earth is millions, hundreds of millions of years old, if it's been hundreds of millions of years since that happened, why should there be any carbon-14 still left? There's no technique on Earth that can measure levels of C14 in materials that are older than 100,000 years. So the fact that we find so much C14 in coal and other kinds of fossil organisms indicates that their age is much less than 100,000 years. Secular geologists have documented that very well. We had 10 coal samples analyzed, all collected in a similar manner by the U.S. Department of Energy, all analyzed by what we deem the best radiocarbon laboratory in the world. And one surprising result was that within the statistics of our samples, that there was no difference in the levels of carbon-14 in the coal near the top and the coal near the bottom, which indicates that all of this material lived at the same time and died at the same time. Strong evidence that the entire fossil record has the same age. In addition, we analyzed several diamonds for carbon-14, hoping we would find C14, but unsure about it. So it was extremely exciting to get the first results back and to find significant levels of C14 in diamond, something like 100 times the detection threshold. And this is very significant because diamonds are formed deep in the earth, on the order of 100 miles down in the earth, generally believed to have formed early in the history of the planet. And because diamonds are the hardest substance in existence, it's essentially impossible to contaminate a diamond. So what this means is that the Earth itself must be young, only a few thousand years old, else the carbon-14 in these diamonds would long since have decayed. And so this carbon-14 must date, we believe, to the original creation of the Earth itself, just a few thousand years ago. The levels of C14 we're finding indicates that all these fossils lived at the same time, were buried at the same time, just a few thousand years ago. And this is an extremely significant result and strong support for the biblical account of a global flood just a few thousand years ago.
Why is there any measurable radiocarbon in rocks which are supposed to be billions of years old? What's more, why is the same level of carbon-14 found in deep earth diamonds, as well as fossils from top to bottom of the fossil record, if the Earth was formed billions of years before animals and organisms appeared on the scene? Is this clear evidence supporting the argument that the Earth is thousands, not billions of years old?
This clip is taken